Hi, I'm Deborah, and today I invited a very, very special guest. Her name is Lindsay Elliott, and we are going to talk about something a a tragedy both of us have shared, unfortunately, about a year and a half ago. And Lindsay and I, we met in Charis Bible College here at Woodland Park, Colorado. And when we met, we couldn't believe what we have experienced are so similar, and how God has brought us together at Charis. So, hi, Lindsay. Thank you
Hi,
for coming.
thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm just so excited that we get to do this. We've been talking about it, right,
Yes, that's right.
for a couple of weeks, and
Yes.
now we actually put our hands to it. I'm just so glad. I'm just so amazed by God's arrangement, His comfort, and everything that He has
Yes.
done in our lives.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, hey, Lindsay, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what
sure.
happened? Uh,
Yeah. I moved to Colorado from Oregon, and I had lived in Oregon since the 1990s. I met my husband Lawrence in 1999 at a Bible study, and we got married in 2001. And we had a very happy marriage. I would say that our marriage was characterized by laughter, and he was my best friend and my favorite person in the whole world.
wow.
So in July of 2021, he got a sore throat, and it turned out that it was COVID. And I just really didn't know what else to do. So he did go to the hospital on August 2nd, 2021. And he was actually admitted immediately to the ICU because his oxygen saturation was so low. And I was not allowed to see him in the hospital. So that day when I dropped him off was actually the last day that I ever got to see him in person conscious. Little did I know that he would actually not survive. And he passed away in the hospital on August 15th.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? When I heard you just mention, just kind of reminded me almost like the exact experience that I had lived through. When you drop him off in the hospital, will you this idea that that was your last goodbye? Would that ever come to you? I mean, that
Not,
idea.
not even a little bit. I didn't even think that he was going to be admitted that day. I thought they would give him some oxygen. They would, give him some kind of cough suppressant and send him home. And in fact, we had asked the doctor prior to that to give him some of those treatments, and they refused. Yeah, it was pretty shocking when I dropped him off in the hospital. I thought I would be able to stay for a little while, but they basically just pushed me out the door. And I really only had time to, grab his arm and say a quick goodbye. And I had no idea that it would be the way that it was.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand. It's basically what happened to me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was conscious, and I was able to talk to him on the phone and have video chats with him that first 5 days that he was in the hospital. So then he went on the ventilator on Saturday. So they said, well, we want to put him on a paralytic, which is a drug they administer so that they can, put a tube down the patient's throat so they can get everything ready for the ventilator. And I said, I don't want you to do any of that. I need to come in and see him first. So they agreed to let me come in and see him, but by the time I got there, they had already administered the paralytic. So what that does is it paralyzes those muscles in your respiratory system so that they can intubate you, but it also causes you not to be able to move, and you can't move your eyes and you can't speak. And so when I saw
Oh,
him, he had his eyes open, but he was unable to respond to me. And that was really jarring, was really hard. I saw things that no spouse should ever have to see. And he was put into a medically induced coma. So the whole next week, I was calling into the hospital every time I could to get as much information as I could. And so we were hopeful that things were getting better. And then Sunday morning, so this would be 8 days after he went on the ventilator, I got a call and they said he had developed a high fever overnight. They were trying to find the source of the fever, and that his blood pressure had dropped, and they were fully supporting his blood pressure with 3 medicines.
Mm.
And when I had gone in previously, the day they put him on the ventilator, they had said to me, the only other time you'll be allowed to come in and visit him is if it's an end of life visit. And so that day when they called me to tell me about his blood pressure and his fever and all that, they said, you can come into the hospital and visit him at any time. And so, they never said it was an end of life visit, but of course I read between the lines and I knew what that was. But through all of this, I was so full of faith. I had
That
so
was
many
my next question.
Yeah.
What was going on in your mind doing that?
Yeah. I had so many confirmations from God that Lawrence's life would continue on earth. He had just turned 50 in July, and he did not have any major health problems at all. And I just felt confident that, this was an attack on his health, but he would be fine. It would not be a problem. And so I was really not focused on what the doctors were saying, because my faith and my confidence was in God.
Mm-hmm.
And so even that last day when I went into the hospital and I was with him, as I watched his blood pressure drop until it was 0,
Wow.
that whole time I still felt confident that he would be fine. So as all of that transpired, it was shocking, but because I was so confident, I didn't feel any grief. I didn't feel any panic. I had so much confidence in God. So that to this day remains a mystery for me, because
You know what? Yes, yes, Lindsay. I totally amen to that. I had that exact same experience, encounter with the Lord, and no fear, but
No.
I had such boldness. I even
Yes.
told my kids, and people are praying for my husband. I told them, if you don't have faith, I don't need prayer.
Yes. Yes. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Um, I felt so strongly that this was not God's will for his life, that his life was supposed to continue on earth.
Yes.
So I called my mom, who was at my house, and I told her what had happened, because of course I was the only one allowed in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I said something to the effect of, well, he's not supposed to be gone. His life is supposed to continue. So it seems like I should pray for resurrection, right, Mom? And she said, yeah, that's right. Let's do it. And so that was my plan, because the Bible says that is a tool that we have available to us in the event of a premature death.
Yes, yes.
And so my mom and I and my friend Nathan went into the funeral homes. We actually had to wait a few days to all come together. I didn't want to pray for him alone. I wanted to pray with at least one person who had already prayed for resurrection, which was my friend Nathan.
So you went to funeral home to pray.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was how many days after he had passed?
So he passed away on a Sunday, and it wasn't until Wednesday that we got into the funeral home. And we went
Wow.
on Wednesday and Thursday to pray. But, I told myself, Jesus didn't raise Lazarus from the dead until he had been gone for 4 days. So no problem. If there's a body there in front of you, there is the ability to raise that person from the dead, as far as I was concerned. So I was unfazed. I
Wow.
still felt totally confident. And when we went into the funeral home, we were all pleasantly surprised to see that it looked as if Lawrence was just taking a nap. He looked totally normal. He just had his eyes closed and he was laying down. But his
And the
skin,
funeral home people, I mean, those they do they know why you're going there? I mean, do they even let you in to do what you wanted to do?
well, they considered it a viewing.
Okay.
And of course, we did not tell them what our plan was,
Okay.
and we tried to be discreet and,
Yes.
respect their space.
Yes.
I'm sure that eventually they figured out what we were doing, since we were in there for hours.
Lindsay, I'm so wow. I'm your faith and your determination. I've never seen anyone in my life had that kind of uh tenacity toward God's words.
Well, I feel like I really have to give God the credit for that because I wasn't really able to think about it at the time. But looking back, I feel as if God gave me and my mom and Nathan a gift of faith to manage that situation because
Yes,
that entire time from the time his heart stopped in the hospital to the day that he was cremated was 8 days. And in that time, I never cried. I never had any grief because I was so confident that he would continue living. And that in itself is supernatural. That's
it
not
is.
something that I could have drummed up by myself. There's just no way. That's, yeah, that's not a human capacity.
If it's not because I had also gone through a similar situation, I wouldn't believe you.
No, right, right. Yeah, you might think that the person is in shock, they don't know
Yeah,
what's going on,
right. You're
and
probably just too in grief, so you block all
right,
your
yes.
feelings, right?
And
But
all
that
I
was
can
not
say is I can assure you that's not what it was. It was definitely a supernatural strength and ability from God.
my
Because
goodness.
we were razor focused when we went into that funeral home, and we laid hands on him and we commanded life, but then we also prayed and asked God if there was anything that we were missing, something we should say or do. We spent time worshiping. um it
For
was actually,
hours.
yeah, hours. And this is going to sound strange, but in a sense we had a good time. We were laughing and joking, and we were telling Lawrence things like, hey, you need to open your eyes and get up, or someone else is going to start driving your truck around. Come on, buddy. It's time to go. There was just almost a lightheartedness to it, which could only have been God.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, then my next question is, Lawrence did not come back for you.
Correct. Yes.
So then what happened to you? What
Um,
what what did the
well,
grief kicks in or
yeah, you can imagine I had a lot of questions because I had been so confident, and it just seemed like God over and over again, not just to me, but through other people, phone calls and texts and things like that, other people saying they were confident that he would continue living. And since he did not, the disparity between those two things was, I wasn't mad at God because I knew that he didn't do this. I always kind of kept in the forefront of my mind John 10:10 when Jesus is speaking and he says, the thief comes only to steal, to kill, and to destroy.
yeah,
But I have come that you might have life in abundance to the full until it overflows. And so I knew this wasn't of God, and that this wasn't God's best plan for Lawrence's life. I felt strongly that his life was cut short, and I did want answers from God, but I knew enough about God and I had a mature enough relationship with him to not blame him ever during this because he's my only hope. I'm not going to turn my back on my only hope.
yeah.
Um,
Once we turn our back to our only life source, our only hope, what do we get?
right. Yeah, I
What do
have
we
no
get?
plan B. I've got all my eggs in one basket here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so that was difficult because basically the day that he was cremated, I felt the grief start to creep in. And it was the first time I had experienced it, and it was terrible. It was just really mentally and emotionally brutal. Like, up to this point, I've really led a pretty charmed life. I've never had anyone close to me die. I've never been abused in any way. God has really protected me. So as far as traumatic events, it was like I went from 0 to 200 in half a second. And that in itself was really hard.
It is.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I would say it was. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So, how long? I mean, because now you and I were here at Caris,
yes,
from where you start feeling grief until you made your decision you want to pursue Caris Bible College.
yeah.
What happened? I mean, why did you have that? Why did you make this decision? And what was that revelation that you need to come to Caris?
So actually, Lawrence and I had a conversation about 4 or 5 years ago, and we asked each other, what would you do if I died? And I don't know what prompted the conversation. I know it's kind of an unusual conversation to have, but I think it's because we didn't live near our immediate families. We didn't have any kids. So if one of us were to be gone, and we weren't expecting that, but if one of us were to be gone, the other one would be really, really alone.
Yeah.
And so my answer to him was that I would probably go to Charis Bible College because we had been partners with Andrew's ministry since about 2012, and we were very familiar with his teachings, and we felt like it was a just really solid, well-balanced ministry. And so, when Lawrence was gone and there I was sitting in my house alone in Oregon, for the first few months, I was just trying to function and like learn how to live my life being alone
I
and kind
think
of,
I think that was actually particularly hard for you, because if like for me, I have kids to
yeah,
after, so things that can distract me or occupy my
yes,
attention, and I have to give it to you because when I was in those moments when my kids are not home during
yes,
daytime when they're in school, that was the hardest time.
it
Actually,
is
for me,
absolutely,
nighttime
yeah,
was better because everyone came home, but during the daytime when they were in school, oh my goodness, that was
yes,
like horrible.
yeah.
So I don't know how do you carry
Only
yourself through?
Only Jesus helping me. That's the only thing I can say because I did spend a lot of time alone. Just a few months before Lawrence passed away, I had quit working for the first time ever in my adult life. And he and I were not attending a church regularly at that time. There wasn't a good church that we could find. So I didn't have coworkers. I didn't have a church family.
All
My
by
immediate,
yourself.
yeah. And so the only time, on occasion, I would have friends come over to my house or I would be invited to someone else's house. But I spent tons of time alone. And I would say that at the times when I got to spend with other people, my grief probably decreased by 75%. Like the
It
times when I
really
had to be
is.
by myself was absolutely terrible. But on some level, I feel like it helped me move through grief faster. Like there are parts of grief you cannot accelerate and you just have to have time. But there are parts that I think can be accelerated. And because I didn't run away from it, I just faced it head on and I just, cried and sat in it. I think that it helped accelerate on some level the healing process.
Well, let me let me ask you a question. When
Yeah.
you're trying to sort out Lawrence's clothes,
Yeah.
because that happened to me when I was trying to, I that was I think about 3 weeks after he was gone, or close to a month. I feel like I started need to sort out his things.
Hmm.
Was was really it's a very challenging thing for me at the time.
Yeah.
uh, every piece of clothes brought back the memories, and
Yes.
um, what happened to you? I mean, I believe that did you also go through that?
I did. I actually had my parents with me during the time of the memorial service and a couple of weeks afterwards. And then I flew with them to their home. And then when I came back home, about a week later, my mom followed. And so she was at my house, about like 6 weeks after he passed away. For several weeks, she was there with me, which was good because she basically fed me and I couldn't even prepare food at that time or
Yeah,
anything. I was
yeah.
losing weight like crazy.
Your mom is such a blessing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so she helped me go through his clothes and
Oh, that
it was just a perfect balance because she didn't push me, but she would say like, "Oh, here's his socks. Do you think that you want to make a decision about his socks?" And so she just kind of fed it to me in little increments. I didn't go through all of his clothes while she was there. I still had some left. But like some of his coats I gave to his friends, and that was somehow comforting to me because it's like people I knew and loved, and I knew these people loved him, they would get to have his clothes and wear them and remember him when they wore them. So that was, like I said, strangely comforting. Sometimes, like, he had some suits hanging in the closet. I would open the closet thinking, okay, I'm going to go through these today. And when I would put my hand on the clothes, I would just have to say, no, I can't do it today. It's too hard. And I would just close the closet and come back another day. So I think um, it's kind of a balance between knowing emotionally what you can handle and not pushing yourself too hard, but also not being stagnant. Like,
Right.
I was never the kind of person who just laid in bed all day. I said, no, I have to get up. You know, my husband loved me so well that for me to just lay in bed all day is really, for me, was not honoring the love that he had given to me. Like, I needed to get up and get moving, even if I wasn't doing very much in the day. I still had to just keep putting one step in front of the other. And I was kind to myself even in that. You know, if I just got up and I just stayed home all day and didn't really do anything, I was like, you know what? That's okay. Tomorrow is another day. We're going to do a different thing tomorrow.
I think what you did was very it's so is so powerful, even though just one little step that you did not allow yourself just completely engulfed or exhausted by grief.
Yeah.
um that every little step that you took, I think is it really brought you out eventually.
Yeah,
um
it did. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, a lot of it has to do with the way that a person thinks, because
mm,
of course your thoughts are what dictate the emotions that you're experiencing. And so I was intentionally kind and gentle to myself in my self-talk. You know, and I would say to myself, I've ne I've never been through this before. There's no manual for this. I don't really know what I'm doing. I just know that I cry a lot, like every day. And I don't love that because, you know, when I was married, we laughed so much. So even today, I feel like my crying to laughing ratio is all messed up. Um, I have an expectation that I will get back to more laughing at some point, but you know, it's a slow process. But yeah, for me, controlling my thoughts and not letting myself think negative things or be overcome with all that I had lost was super important. I had to, if I was going to think those thoughts, I had to just do it in little increments and know when to stop and turn my thoughts back to something positive and intentionally think about what I did have and all the good things in my life. And the fact that I had a super happy, wonderful 20-year marriage. And, you know, some people are married and unhappy the whole time. Like, I had a beautiful gift that some people never get to experience.
wow, such powerful encouragement words coming from you.
I
It's
hope so.
wow. um well, my question next is, um during this time, so from now and where you were when you look back, you know, it hasn't been even 2 years, a year and a
Yeah.
half or so.
Yeah.
How did you see yourself coming along this journey?
You know, that actually helped me even when I was still in Oregon because I was there for the first year and then I moved to Colorado. Um, you know, when I was at like the 3 month or the 6 month or the 8 month mark, I would look back to remember what it was like for me in month 1 or 2. And I would think, there is no amount of money in the whole world that would ever make me want to go back to that place. And so that helped me realize, oh, I am somehow getting better. Like, even though it feels really, really hard, every day I miss him so much.
Yeah.
I must be getting better if I don't want to go back to that place I was at 3 or 6 months ago. And of course, you know, moving to Colorado that just took all of my courage. I never thought I'd be moving to another state without my husband. You know, I have read and heard that fear can be a big factor for widowed people, you know, women especially. And I am just so grateful that in all of this, I have never felt afraid. I feel like God has just put a bubble of grace around me to protect me through all of this. And
Amen.
I've also felt his love, and not just protection, but the love and provision. Like he's taking care of me, he's protecting me. Yeah, I felt that really strongly when I was in Oregon, but even more so as I moved here to Colorado. Like he's just got his hand over me, and he is my husband now, and he is such an excellent husband. He's taken such good care of me.
We share what happened to us, all our so far the biggest loss in our life,
Yeah.
but how God has been there in such dark moment. And
Yes.
I see uh, some of friends that who had lost their loved one years ago, but they still couldn't walk out of it. And I
Yeah.
consider myself so blessed, so
I
blessed.
agree. Yes.
Yes. Lindsay, I would like you to share. I mean, what do you want to say to others that who might have lost a very dear person of their life? What do you what is the lesson that you learn, or what is this journey that you can say some encouragement or comfort or any advices for them on this journey? Because it was not easy, it's difficult,
It is.
but it's not impossible, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said before about thoughts, I feel like controlling our thoughts is so very, very important to the quality of life that we will be able to live in moving forward. And for me, it's only with God's help that I have been able to not focus on the negative and turn and focus towards the positive. But I just made a decision in my heart and my mind that even though I had this wonderful marriage and I loved my life, and I was basically forced into a new life that I didn't ask for, it was just pushed on me. I wasn't, I made a decision I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to have a pity party, and that God could bring restoration to me in ways that I can't even imagine. And that I was going to believe somehow, some way, that the best is yet to come.
Amen.
That even though I had this wonderful life that was so fantastic, that God could bring massive restoration to me and bring me joy and peace and happiness in new ways that I haven't experienced before. And so I hold on to that all the time. And I'm always expecting good things to happen to me. And so
Amen.
keeping myself in that place of positivity and being really purposeful about it, I think has made a huge difference, because a lot of times people get stuck in grief because they just wallow in pity and they think about everything that they've lost all day long. And if you're going to be able to, move forward and gain some healing in your emotions and your thoughts, you have to be intentional about it. You can't just sit on the couch and feel bad for yourself all day.
Yeah, Lindsay, I'm so agree with what you said, because I realized when I was dealing the losses, when I look at those, pictures of my husband and I and our kids when we were together, and I could be so depressed. It's like, oh,
Yes.
what a difference now I'm alone. Look at
Yes.
years ago, we were so happy. Then to a point is depression could set in, because I
Yes.
was meditating what I have lost
Yes.
instead of, like, you have such a grateful heart, Lord. Who am I that you have blessed me with such beautiful memory,
Yes.
or looking
Mhm.
forward and looking upward. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wow, the interview was greatly encouraged me.
Me too.
Well, Lindsay, I mean, I feel like, I consider our losses are still pretty fresh, just a year and a half.
Yeah.
Your husband passed away about 2 weeks or 1 month earlier than G passed away.
Yeah.
But look at us where we are right now. Both of us, we can't stop thanking God for his
That's right.
amazing grace and favor, and really doing the pastime, just like what you said. We literally were taken by Jesus, and he is our husband.
Absolutely.
And what a glory and triumph to see how this journey turned out to be.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you.
Oh, I feel like I'm being washed all over again by your testimony, and just praise God.
Yes.
All right, and well, we are concluding our program or interview today, and I hope to see you next time and more amazing story coming up. Bye.
Bye.